Obviously, Auburn has had a pretty disappointing season so far in year 2 under Coach Hugh Freeze. And sometimes the truth hurts, but it's necessary when it is so blatantly obvious. The season isn't over, however. There are still opportunities to end on a high note with 4 games left. But if you're an Auburn fan, there is an underlying current of optimism. And I want to point it out. Because when the ship is truly sinking, what do? You get off of it, whether it be by lifeboat or just jumping your ass in the water. But you don't see Auburn's recruits leaving, our younger players on the roster mailing it in. In fact, their bond to the Plains seems to be growing stronger. They want to be the group to fix it and to get Auburn off the downhill slide that they seem to have been stuck on for a while on the field. Hugh Freeze and his staff aren't just recruiting a certain type of player, they are recruiting a certain type of person. And that is just as important, especially in this circumstance. Because it's easy to go join one of the big dogs right now or go with who is hot and just keep the train on rolling. It's probably a better business decision. But if you truly want to get the come up, you need alpha males who not only want the moment, but they need it. They have to have it. The type of guy who wants to be the start of something special, not just the continuation of it. Now, what Auburn lacks the most right now is that clutch gene. And that's one thing to give effort. That should be expected. It gets you in the door. But it's another to have the confidence to excel when the moment is at its biggest. There are other problems when it comes to in-game situations, and Auburn fans know that. The coaching hasn't been great. But football is a game that is won by players while coaches watch and talk about it, and it always will be. You can have the best scheme and practice structure, but if you don't have the dogs, you will always be fighting uphill. It's a mixture of talent and guts. Auburn fans should be thankful for older leadership on this team because they don't screw up off the field and they're great people, it seems, for the most part. But as upsetting as it may be to some, you are judged on wins and losses at this level. And to that effect, it hasn't been good enough from this group. But having said that, this younger group of guys are already on the team, and the ones that are coming in are hungry as hell, and they want to be the change. And it will be that attitude plus their ability that can send Auburn back to where they feel like they rightfully belong. So it's okay to lay down and bleed a while. The Auburn fans have done that. But don't let Auburn get up, because when they do, hell's coming with them. David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, my brother, former Western State Colorado wide receiver Blaine Crain. And people say, oh, Jake, you're from Auburn. You're an Auburn fan. You're just going to always see the best in Auburn. And I'm harder on Auburn than anybody. I think that's one of the things that separates us from other people is that, I'm not going to just sunshine pump stuff about Auburn or what I hope. I'm going to tell you what I really think. But when I look at the reaction of some of these younger guys, the Jalen Crawfords, the DeMarcus Riddicks, the Keldrick Falks, you look offensively, some of the wide receiver group that they have, Connor Lew, some of these young offensive linemen, and the guys they have coming in, and the way they talk, and the way they act, even after Auburn loses a game. Cone, you've been in as many locker rooms as I have. Blaine, you have too. It takes a certain type of person to be able to come in and want to fix something. And I think Hugh Freeze is tapping into that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, right after Oklahoma State, I think you can make the case that Auburn's been the second most disappointing team in college football this season, at least for me. Not that I thought the ceiling was super high with Peyton Thorne returning at quarterback, but that's just how much faith I have in Hugh Freeze when you're looking down the barrel of 3-5 right now, 8 weeks into the season. Now, a couple things that are newsworthy since we're talking about Auburn right now. I mean, one is my thoughts on Auburn are you can't care as much about football as Auburn does and not get it right eventually. I think that's really how I want to phrase that because, and I hope that that's with Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is a fan of our show. I like Hugh Freeze personally, but even if it's not, you can't care as much about football as they do on the plane.
The question is eventually how long
to get it right. And what does that mean? Does that mean you create a dynasty like Alabama had? I don't know if that's possible, but they're going to get it right. They're going to be really good at football. A couple things while we're talking about them. New athletic director you guys got from Georgia Southern, Jared Banco coming in, and now Chris Davis going to be the athletic director at Georgia Southern. He's a friend of ours. He's a friend of the show, so that's good. But, right now I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts on the Vanderbilt game specifically. I know you're thinking holistically right now, big picture, but 3-5 right this second. You're going to play Vanderbilt, but this is such like an unusual thing right now. This is a 5-3 Vanderbilt team. Auburn favored at home by more than a touchdown. The touchdown plus the hook right now at 7.5. And it's sort of like a lose-lose in that if you beat Vanderbilt, you don't get the benefit of that being some great conference win because of the brand you're beating. But if you lose the game, it's like it sort of can get taken out of context later in the year or next year that, wait, this was a really good Vanderbilt team that you actually beat. Yeah,
and when I look at kind of going into this game, the momentum you got from beating Kentucky, and you're right, David. I mean, if the goal at Auburn, it shouldn't be questioning whether you can beat Vanderbilt or not. This Vanderbilt team is different than what we've seen in the past, and I want to get into the scheme of it in a second and what I think the best way to go about it is and what Vanderbilt has to do. But if you're Auburn, it's about creating momentum heading into the offseason. So it's getting that number in front of the loss number. You're 3-5 right now. If you can win this one, you're 4-5. Most likely you're going to lose to Alabama on the road, which that's your 6th loss, which means you got ULM and Texas A&M, which Texas A&M is going to be tough. Hell, to be honest with you, ULM's a lot tougher than what some people thought. So it's a race to try and get to 6-6, which isn't acceptable at Auburn. But you do want to be able to hold this recruiting class together, like I mentioned. You want to be able to make sure you don't get rated from the transfer portal. And I don't think they will. It'll go bad either way. But creating that momentum heading into the offseason, Blaine, and getting Auburn fans something to be excited about on the football field that in turn will continue to produce, a level that Auburn feels like when I go into a room to recruit a guy or I try and get a guy from the transfer portal, hey, look at what we're building over here. This is some proof of concept. Not all of it, but some proof of concept.
Yeah, you got to be excited what Hugh Freeze is doing when it comes to recruiting standpoint. But one thing I do question is, we talk about the older guys, and we know the older guys can't really get it done on the field when it matters the most. Why not play the younger guys more?
And they are. They had 6 freshmen on the field,
right? And that's how you keep guys from going into transfer portal. Is one of the reasons is you put them on the football field, especially when you need them. And right now, what are you really scared of losing if you're Auburn in the transfer portal? What are you really afraid of losing? So right now, that's the same thing with Peyton Thorne. And look, the future is brighter for Auburn. I think you can see that. Everything, the breadcrumbs are starting to line up to create a loaf. And sooner or later, Auburn is going to be fine. But right now, what Hugh Freeze is doing on the field, it's bad. We know that. It's getting better, but the personnel's not there. He's selling really crappy cars to good families.
Yeah, he's selling them
he's putting in a dream, a belief, and he's making kids believe in the future. And right now, without a money sign, putting a label that on a check, that's extremely hard to do. Yeah. So it's a positive you can look at for Auburn. Like, you're playing this bad on the field, and you're still recruiting this good.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, imagine what just starts going good. But this game against Vanderbilt, there's a couple things I look at. When you watch the way Vanderbilt operates offensively, and I get asked all the time, I go on these other shows, how is Vanderbilt able to do this? Well, Vanderbilt's personnel is better than in any recent time I can remember. Overall, line of scrimmage, skill position. But they're unbelievably smart in the way they go about it. We watch Army and Navy and Air Force and maybe some of these schools that can't get all the top offensive linemen and all these guys that other places can possibly get run the triple option. Why? Because it negates some of the athleticism that they're going against. Now, Vanderbilt doesn't run the triple option truly, but they run a version of it out of the gun. They get in that diamond set. They have a lot of triple option tendencies. There's a lot of horizontal movement pre-snap and post-snap across the line of scrimmage that slows down the eyes of the defense a little bit, which slows down the feet of the defense. Because even though Vanderbilt's personnel about as well as they have been since I can remember, they're still most of the time, at least right now, not going to be as athletic as the defenses they face in the Southeastern Conference. So one way to kind of slow that down is to do what they do, right? Line up in those formations. Tim Beck does a really good job of it. It's what kept them on the field against Alabama. But Vanderbilt doesn't take a lot of shots down the field. They operate in about a 15 to 20-yard box, and they're really, really good at doing that. So if you're Auburn, how do you get to Diego Pavia, who's beaten Hugh Freeze? He's going for a 3-peat against Hugh Freeze and a 2-peat against Auburn. How do you speed Diego Pavia up? How do you throw him off this game? You've got to score early. You've got to get in front of Vanderbilt early, probably by at least 10 points, to make them start having to get out of their schedule and pushing the ball down the field. Not that Vanderbilt can't do it, not that Pavia can't do it, but that's not the way they want to play. So we can look at Auburn's defense and say, hey, you're playing better, but if you want to really get Vanderbilt on their back foot, score early, put them behind the 8 ball, because I don't think they can hit chunk plays down the field consistently in the pass game to be able to beat you. Then obviously it's getting them off schedule in the 3rd and 7s and 3rd and 8s. Why did Texas beat them the way they did? Because Vanderbilt was living in 3rd and 6 and more. Why was Vanderbilt able to win the time of possession against Alabama the way they did? Because Vanderbilt was living in 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4. And the way that offense operates, when you do negate the athleticism somewhat of the defense, you can hit those balls in the flat, right? Diego Pavia is scrambling for 40 yards. When it's 3rd and 3, it's a first down. When it's 3rd and 9, it's not. That and getting the ball out in space against Vanderbilt's defense and letting your athletes overwhelm them over time, that's where I think the difference is going to come. But look, I'm telling you right now, if you're an Auburn fan, I'm not super confident in Auburn covering 7.5 against Vanderbilt, but I think this is going to be a war, dude.
I honestly, I couldn't believe that the line was 7.5, even being on the road, even being in Jordan-Hare. When you talk about ways to speed up Diego Pavia and taking that early lead for Auburn, I think in addition to that, you have to shut him down on the ground. You have to shut his ground game down. I mean, one, they fought back against Texas, right, which is a superior team and superior talent right now to Auburn, and two, we've seen Auburn blow some leads. So it's not enough just to get a lead against Diego Pavia and this Vanderbilt team. You've got to figure out a way to shut down him running so that he feels forced to throw it, and you also have a 7 or 10 point lead.
And I did have somebody tell me the spread looks like the way it is because there's some questions about Pavia's health. Now, I haven't seen anything. Now, if that happens, look, the kid they got is the backup. Remember, he was at Utah. Nate Johnson, I think's his name. He can fly. He can absolutely fly. Struggles to throw the ball. Came in against Florida. Earlier in the year, a couple years ago, and was able to do some things, but he'd turn the ball over. He'd fumble it. If Pavia can't go, this is a totally different story, but Auburn's got to turn around and hand the ball to Jarquez Hunter a lot.
Yeah, that's the game I would play. You got to know who your best player is, and right now that's Jarquez Hunter. I mean, leading the SEC in rushing. The kid's averaging more than 7 a carry almost. But that offensive line is crazy. You look at this one, Vanderbilt's never out of a football game. All right, especially this year. I don't care how many points you are up. Those guys believe in every second that they're not out of it, and Auburn is known for blowing football games. This is going to come down to what team makes the least mistakes. Peyton Thorne can't put the ball in the other team's hand, which is he's extremely good at, which I thought he did well against Kentucky, not doing that. And you have to trust your players, Hugh Freeze. You have to trust Jarquez Hunter. If you are in the 10-yard line, in the red zone, and I'm an Auburn fan, and I don't see Jarquez Hunter get the ball at least twice, I am going to be livid. But I do think Vanderbilt, this is a sneaky game. I do not like the line. If anything, I like the under.
Yeah, I've heard under. I was talking with Zach Blackerby from Locked On Auburn about this when I went on their show. I really like the under in this game because I think Auburn, after pounding the rock last week, is going to do it again with Jarquez. They're going to feed him a lot. And then Vanderbilt, with what they do with Pavia, with those triple option tendencies, they want to run the ball as well. They want to stay on schedule. Clark Lee and Tim Beck know that. But as far as moving forward during this season, I think Vanderbilt's playing with house money, which is the scariest thing overall because, I mean, it's already a win with what they've done, but I don't think they think like that. And to your point, I know it's not enough for them to get up double digits. It's not about making Vanderbilt quit. I don't think Vandy's going to quit. I think you can make an argument Kentucky laid down in the second half last week, but Vanderbilt's not going to quit. It's just throwing them off schedule, making them dribble with their left hand, and letting them not get to their spots, right? Like we hear in basketball. Don't let a shooter get to a spot. Diego Pavia, he wants to turn it into kind of an etch-a-sketch game, right? I'm going to go here, then I'm going to go there, then I'm going to go there, and I'm going to throw it there, and I'm going to run it here, and I'm going to turn around, I'm going to hand it here. Like you can't, you've got to put him in a position where it's, hey, it's 3rd and 8, you're passing. You're passing the ball, all right? And then when we rush, we've got to be smart in our pass rush lanes, and we'll see if Auburn can do that. What's up, YouTube? Happy Halloween. Hope you're dressing up, and hope you're dressing up as something good and clever. Make sure if you're here, you hit that subscribe button, and you're watching this, so you're obviously here. Let's go ahead and knock it out.